Hi, everybody. Welcome wherever you are in the world. I hope you are staying safe and healthy and connected. If you are joining us for the first time, I am Rana el Kaliouby. I'm co-founder and CEO of Affectiva and author of the book Girl Decoded. We do this every Wednesday. We go live and we have a conversation around the book and the topics that are covered in the book. So my guest today is my friend and my partner in crime and my chief no officer, Gabi Zijderveld, our chief marketing officer at Affectiva. I'm so excited to do this with you, Gabi.
Me too.
Hi, welcome. And together we're going to talk about the many use cases of emotion AI. Gabi and I often joke that we end up in these parties or events and we start talking about our technology and people inevitably say, oh, like, have you thought about using it in like X, Y, and Z? And the applications of emotion AI are enormous and we believe it's going to transform many industries. So we thought we would spend some time today talking about the current applications, like where is it applied today, but also some of the future use cases that we are seeing on the horizon.
Yes. Exactly. And before we get into that, Rana, I was just going to say we are doing a giveaway of your book. So please post your questions for us as we go through this topic today. And we'll randomly select a couple of people towards the end and we'll give away 2 books. And then we'll just reach out to you over social media, get your address details offline, and we'll get the book out to you. So by all means, post your comments and questions. We'd love to hear from you. So Rana, let's kick it off, right? So at Affectiva, we are on a mission to humanize technology. And even though Girl Decoded, your book, is very much about your personal journey, it's also very much the story of Affectiva and why we're doing this and how we got on this mission of humanizing technology and how we invented emotion AI. So about this humanizing technology, tell us a little bit about that. Let's start there.
Yeah, the thesis at the very high level is that technology has a lot of IQ, a lot of cognitive intelligence, but no EQ, no emotional intelligence. And as we look around us and technology and AI in particular starts to become more and more mainstream and it starts to take on roles that were traditionally done by humans, like assisting with your healthcare or driving your car, we're going to need these technologies to be human-centric and to, understand humans and understand our emotional states and our mental states and our behaviors. So that's the thesis, and we're on the mission to build this kind of core technology that has emotional intelligence.
Yeah, and when you think about that, right, you can really imagine a future where this technology, emotion AI, as you and I have coined it, right, where this will be ingrained in the fabric of the devices. It will be innate in all these technologies that surround us and that help us be more productive, give us more insight, let us be healthier, that really support us in every aspect of our lives. So when you think about that, you can also imagine that the applications are multifold, right? There's so many different verticals or markets, if you will, that this could play in, right? But we are a small company. We're effectively still a startup, right? So as a small company, you have to focus, and we can't build everything for everyone right away. So there were some early adopters in early markets that first got started with emotion AI, soon after you and Roz spun out of the Media Lab 10 years ago.
Right.
So you want to talk about those first adopters in these earliest markets that you entered?
Yeah. So one of the and again, like, yes, there are so many applications of the technology, which makes it both kind of what is so exciting about this, but it's also challenging, right? Because we have to pick a market where, it's big enough, there's a good product market fit. And so one of the earliest adopters of this technology was the kind of the market research in the media analytics space. And, at the moment, we work with 25% of the Fortune Global 500 companies to test the emotional engagement their users and their audiences have with their content. So you can imagine Coca-Cola, for example, you know, Coca-Cola, global company, has all this online video content and online video advertising, and they want to really know how are people engaging with this content?
Yeah.
Like it, not like it? Do they find it interesting, funny, boring, sentimental? And so we're able with our technology to quantify these moment-by-moment responses.
And I think that for them, for these big brands, it's huge, right? Because it helps them create more meaningful content. It helps them develop content that's really going to resonate with these target audiences. Yeah. And it helps them make decisions on how they place their content, how they do their media buying.
Right.
So again, about 25% of the Fortune Global 500 use our technology in that context. So that's pretty awesome. And of course, still for us, a big market we're in, and there's lots of growth and opportunity within that space, and also plenty of kind of adjacent markets, right, that we're currently looking at.
Yeah, because you can think about it, it's not just online video advertising. It could be online video content of any sorts, right? It could be, you know, the movie trailers, TV shows, even, you know, we as a startup, we don't advertise in the traditional way, but we create a ton of video content. It would be awesome to know, you know, how people are engaging with this content.
Right, exactly. And also when you see that extending into the customer and consumer experience and CX space, it's really quite interesting. So we have, you know, a great foothold in this market, but still, I think, tremendous opportunity for us to do even more there. So it's an area we're definitely excited about. So kind of moving on to another use case, right? I always find it so cool when you tell me that when you and Roz were still at the Media Lab, even in those days, the big automotive companies would come up to you and had all kinds of ideas of how in the future emotion AI could be used in automotive. And in those days, conceptually, it all made sense, but it seemed very futuristic and very far off. And then I would say maybe 4 years ago, we all at Affectiva started noticing a tremendous increase in interest from these automotive companies.
Right.
They're all reaching out to us all of a sudden, wanting to know how can we use this emotion AI thing in automotive. So you want to tell us a bit more about how we tackle that one?
Yeah. And the use case there is very interesting. And to your point, like actually even before MIT, when I was at Cambridge, I did towards the end of my dissertation work, I did some work with Toyota where I collected data. That was back when I lived in Egypt, and I collected data myself in my own car and guinea pig. But the use case there is in the short term to understand driver impairment. So things like, again, leveraging a camera and optical sensor in the vehicle, leveraging things like understanding driver fatigue, driver drowsiness, distraction. My daughter's about to start driving, and, you know, I do worry about distracted driving. And this technology can flag that behavior and then respond in sorts, you know, different ways to increase safety. So that's definitely a value proposition, not just for consumer light vehicles, but for the fleet market as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And talk a little bit about kind of the intersection of media analytics and automotive, because I think that's really where we can bring some of our capabilities together. I think it's a pretty cool use case.
Yeah, what we're seeing in the automotive industry, which is really interesting, is shifting the emphasis from the driver to the other occupants and passengers of the vehicle, right? So if you imagine the backseat experience, and you've got people engaging with content or music, we're able to, based on the work we've done in media analytics, I mean, we've hit, 9.5 million facial responses in the last week. So we've learned a lot around how people engage with content, and we can leverage these learnings to help automakers, create very engaging backseat experiences.
That are also potentially more personalized, or could vary from geography to geography, right? Because we have lots of global data. So we're seeing how people engage with content differently depending on where they are in the world. You know, what I think is pretty cool in automotive is that we're really kind of, again, at the forefront of building a new market within, or a new kind of segment within automotive, right? And we call that in-cabin sensing. And actually, it is really more than just looking at people's reactions, their engagement, and their emotions. So can you describe in-cabin sensing a bit more, and how it's more than just looking at people's reactions? And
I like to think in terms of Venn diagrams. So like imagine.
Well, this is a good one though.
One is the driver, and then of course the occupants in the vehicle, and then the third is the state of the cabin. So in-cabin sensing is this holistic approach to understanding what's happening inside the car. What's the state of the driver? How many occupants are in the vehicle?
Yeah.
How are they feeling? What activities are they engaged in? And then what's the state of the cabin? Is there a child left behind? Are there objects left behind? Are you interacting with a phone? And is it like this or like this, right? So all of these, you know, other channels of information about what else is happening in the vehicle can be really powerful. I mean, what to you is like, what for you are some of the manifestations? How can this take shape inside a car?
Well, first and foremost, what I think is really cool is that it's very human-centric, right? It's at the end of the day, even though we're working on like object detection, it's still at the end of the day about understanding what's going on with people in a vehicle.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not particularly crazy about driving myself. I don't mind necessarily being driven around. And I can definitely imagine a future where your backseat experience becomes more personalized to your needs in the moment. And that's what really is resonating with me. So I might be in a vehicle, I'm getting tired, the lights dim, the music turns to my preferred soothing music. It calms me down. Maybe the temperature goes up because I'm always cold. So it just basically creates comfort for me. And also the thinking with that is that I get out of that vehicle feeling better than when I got in. And, you know, this kind of expands into areas of active wellness and mental health. But if something as pragmatic as a vehicle that now needs to get us from A to B in a safe manner can be much more than that, that's an area I get excited about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for you, what is it?
What's that?
For you, what is the thing that excites you about the in-cabin sensing capabilities?
Yeah, I think like you. I mean, well, again, before this pandemic, I spent a lot of time not just commuting to work, but also driving my kids to all sorts of places. I think I did the math once, and it was about 30 days a year.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, no, I literally like tournaments and like whatever, right?
So you're a scientist, a CEO, and like a soccer mom driving your kids around.
A glorified Uber driver, basically.
Unpaid.
Unpaid, glorified Uber driver, exactly. But if I could repurpose that time again in the future where I could be a rider instead of a driver, I'm excited about the opportunities. You know, sometimes I want to be productive and work in the vehicle. And so I almost want the vehicle to reconfigure the lighting and the temperature and the music to maximize productivity. But sometimes I literally just want to nap. And in that case, maybe the lights dim, it's a different music track. I don't really want video. I don't want to be watching content. And I just, you know, the car lets me sleep, get my power nap in. Right. So
it's your needs, right? And it adapts to that.
Right.
So I think that's cool. And then just to kind of wrap on automotive, one area that we've talked about a lot, and especially as parents will resonate, is the child left behind scenario, right? Where computer vision and our type of AI can help detect whether or not there's a child left behind, because unfortunately still so many of them die when they're forgotten in vehicles and they overheat. So it's very, first and foremost, it's all about safety.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, we could make transportation experiences better. You know, we all think that's super meaningful. So moving on to like a next area of use case. And I'm also gonna, in the meantime, keep an eye out for questions. If we get any questions that
there's a vehicle automotive related question.
Yeah, I was just seeing. You want to read it out?
You go for it.
Well, I'll read it out, and I'll let you chime in first. So, from Dren Phillips Rajan, do you think AI? So cars are becoming IoT devices, and do you think AI will be able to build customized vehicles for customers to meet their individual needs, especially, for example, for disabled people in the future.
That is interesting. My initial thought went to physical disabilities, and I'm sure there are ways to think about, personalized algorithms and maybe 3D printers or something. I don't know. But then if you think about cognitive disabilities, right? I think vehicles can actually really incorporate this type of in-cabin sensing to accommodate for that. Like, for example, it could. Based on, based on where you're at in terms of, cognitive abilities, it can decide to show you less information or more information, or personalize the experience in a way that is less stressful, for example.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting. I'm just going to throw another question at you, because I think it's a good one, and it's also for us very relevant in automotive. It's from Youssef Gamil. I think it is quite challenging to get data to train a machine learning models, especially if someone is, in a startup. For example, should the startup encourage users to contribute in sharing data?
That is a great
data is a challenging one, huh?
Yeah, you're right, Youssef. Basically, a lot of these machine learning algorithms are. What did I do to my camera?
Yeah, you just moved your camera a bit. Yeah, you're unfuzzied now. We can see you better again.
I just kicked it, basically.
Yeah, and then you turn all fuzzy, but you're back.
I'm back. So a lot of these machine learning algorithms are data hungry, and so you're absolutely right that data is a key component of this equation. It's interesting, in media analytics work, we have amassed about 5 billion facial frames from all of the work we do. By the way, everything we do is based on consent and opt-in. But when we started doing work in the automotive space, we wanted to collect automotive data. And so we have a number of ways where we do that. We have, we call it the Affectiva driver kit. We send out camera kits to drivers who opt in into our study, and we collect data over the course of a few weeks, and with their consent. And when we first started doing that, Gabi, remember, we didn't know what we were going to get, because people know the cameras are there, and we were concerned that it would just be uninteresting data.
Because the assumption might be people are driving. There's really not much going on, right?
But we were wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's a treasure trove in terms of interesting and sometimes scary driving behaviors. I mean, we see people falling asleep at the wheel. We see people super distracted, texting, sometimes not on only one phone, but two.
That lady is my favorite one. She doesn't touch the steering wheel. She's not wearing a seatbelt. She's going through a city at 60 kilometers an hour, I think the speedometer says. And there she is texting, right?
Yeah, definitely. So data, it's important to think about a data strategy. That's a key.
Yeah. Hey, just a quick little sidebar, right? So we do quite a bit. We have a lot of data already, but we do quite a bit of data collection. So we run these studies where we bring people and groups of people into our vehicle. Of course, we've had to pause all this work now that we're in a global pandemic, right? So you mind just sharing a few thoughts about how we're kind of thinking about at the right time bringing this back, and maybe also talk a little bit briefly about synthetic data, and then we'll get back to the use cases.
Yeah, very quickly. Yes, absolutely. So we did have to stop all of our data collection initiatives. We do believe that, we will come back to it when it's safe to do so, both for our employees and our data collection specialists, but of course the public too. And we have some ideas on how to do that. For example, we often want to collect data from multiple occupants in the vehicle. So maybe we onboard a family, right? A family of 4. And so they're already, hanging out together. So there's less, it's less of a safety, what do you call it? Safety.
Safety concern, really.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Because everyone's health and well-being, our employees and the people that participate in our studies, that's, of course, the most important thing.
But that also, to your point, Gabi, that has put a lot of emphasis on data synthesis and augmenting our data set to create, more examples of what we need, but also creating data from scratch. And that's been really interesting to explore.
Yeah, and maybe that's actually data could be another topic for a live stream in the future. It's an interesting one with many considerations. But today we're on the use cases, and we're going to move on to healthcare, right? Because I think that is an area that we've always had a keen eye on, and that's so near and dear to our hearts, because the impact that technology like ours can have in that area is so meaningful. It's definitely a very difficult space to enter, and it's wrought with regulation and all kinds of, bottlenecks to overcome. And right now we cannot be hugely focused on it because we have to direct our attention to some of the other markets at this time. But we certainly have some really interesting early applications that we've seen. You want to share a few with the folks who are listening in today?
Yeah, I'll start with one of the very first applications we've explored with this technology, which is autism. So way back at MIT, the project that brought me over to the United States was actually a National Science Foundation grant to build a Google Glass-like device and integrate some facial analysis technology in it to help individuals on the autism spectrum really try to understand nonverbal signals. And fast forward, a few years, we are now partnered with BrainPower. And if you're following our virtual book tour events, you may have attended the conversation I had with Net Sahin weeks ago around how he's integrating our technology into Google Glass and making it available to individuals on the autism spectrum. So that's one area that I'm, still very excited and passionate about. I would also say mental health is another area where there is a lot of applicability of our technology. If you think about it, the gold standard in mental health is still a questionnaire from a scale from 1 to 10. How depressed are you, or how much pain are you in? And we believe that we know that there are facial and vocal biomarkers of things like stress and anxiety and depression and even suicidal intent. And if, the trick is going to be, how do you integrate that into a scalable technology platform so that you have access to that data? And then you can flag, these conditions to.
Yeah, that seems like such a huge area of opportunity, right? Whereas in healthcare, when it comes down to our physical health, right, we can quantify and measure everything. But when it comes down to our mental health, it's still, there's these weird rating scales that you refer to, right? Like you have to self-report how depressed you are. So with our technology, with our, opt-in and consent, our permission could track our emotional well-being and kind of create a baseline or a sort of benchmark that says, hey, Gabi, this is your norm, but now I can see you're deviating from your norm and something might be wrong. And if I then give permission for that information to be shared with my loving family or with my doctor even, there could be so many interesting advances that are made in diagnosing and treating mental health issues. So I think that's an exciting one. Also, the Parkinson's one and the facial reconstructive surgeon. You have to talk about those.
I'll start with the Parkinson's one. It's one of my favorite stories to tell. So a few years ago, we have this email, sales@affectiva.com. And our head of sales at the time got this email from a 15-year-old high school student, Aaron Smith, who apparently had been watching a news documentary on Parkinson's and noticed that their facial expressions were off, these patients. So she went on Google and she was like, I'm curious if anybody's looked into facial technology. And she found us and she emailed sales@affectiva.com and basically said, I want to buy your technology because I want to look into Parkinson's. And so our head of sales, found me and she was like, what do I do with this? She's not going to afford our technology. So what do we do? How do I respond? And I thought about it and I said, I didn't want to, I was skeptical that she would take this technology and do anything with it, but I didn't want to be the one to be in her way. So I was like,
the way of her amazing innovation, right? She's 15 years old. Go, right?
Exactly. So we're like, you know what? Let's give her a technology license and let's see what she does with it. And 4 months later, she's partnered with the Michael J. Fox Foundation, and she's ran this controlled study, and she's found these indicators of Parkinson's, and she started a company, and she's now, I believe she must be a sophomore now. She's a sophomore at Stanford,
Yeah, but you got like offers from all kinds of like big schools, right? And a grant from I think it was the Peter Thiel Foundation. So pretty amazing, right? And then Dr. Joe Dusseldorp. Let's give him a shout out. Oh my gosh, so amazing. You want to talk a bit about that?
Dr. Joe, if you're listening in from Australia. So Joe was attending our first, I believe, Emotion AI Summit. He was a resident doctor at Mass General Hospital at the time, and he does facial reconstructive surgery. So folks who have facial palsy and other kind of facial muscular issues, he basically conduct some surgeries, and then the idea is to try and measure if their facial expressions are back to normal. This is currently done very subjectively, right? You just like come in and smile.
Well, you know what he actually told us? It's not, it's even worse than just subjective. Some surgeons actually tickle their patients, so they start laughing, and then they measure millimeter smile increase. That's what he told us. When I first heard that, I was like, oh my God, that's let's quantify that, right? Automate that.
But anyways, he was listening to a presentation by Graham Page, who was talking about the market research application. And he was like, I wonder if I could use this technology to quantify the smiles of my patients. And again, we made the technology available, and he's integrated that into his practice and spearheading the use of it across the whole.
To basically benchmark how well they're surgically rebuilding smiles, right? Which is amazing. Yeah. Hey, Rana, let's cover a few more. So there's also a really interesting area in healthcare, of course, in telehealth and these virtual conferences. And maybe at the end, we can talk a bit more about video conferencing. But when you think about the intersection of healthcare and also social robotics, there's also a really interesting use case there. You want to very briefly talk about Meibo and then maybe about robotics as well?
Yeah. Yes. So Meibo is a social robotics, Catalia Health is a social robotics spin out of MIT, and they have a cute social robot called Meibo. And the idea is to send that social robot back home with terminally ill patients. And it's a conduit to an actual human nurse. And you can't afford to send a human nurse back with every patient, right? So the robot engages with the patient, makes sure that they adhere to their medication schedule, but also checks in with the patient to make sure that they are that they are not depressed, or if they need extra help, it can then escalate it to a human nurse or clinician. So I love that human machine partnership.
Yeah, it is very much a human to machine partnership, right? It's not about these robots taking over and leading humankind and being our masters and all that stuff. It's more about a symbiotic relationship where these systems are supportive of us, right? And but it's also very much about trust and trust-based relationships, which I think is interesting.
Right.
And we can extend these thoughts and also the applicability of emotion AI into conversational interfaces as well, right? So when you think of the likes of an Alexa or a Siri, want to just shed some thoughts and some comments on that?
What I find fascinating is that this technology can be integrated in whatever kind, like it can be an embodied social robot, or it could be an embodied conversational agent like an Alexa, or it could be the chatbot on your phone, right? So it can take many forms if you are, wherever you're tuned in from, how many of you have gotten into a situation where you have an Alexa or a Siri or any other conversational agent, and you're asking that thing to play a song or order something for you, and it gets it wrong. So you do it again, it gets it wrong again. So you say it again, and now it gets it wrong again. And now you're becoming really angry and frustrated. But this agent has absolutely no idea, right? Imagine if it had emotion AI integrated, and it could say, oh, Gabi, it sounds like I got this wrong. I am sorry. Like, let me try again, or let me try something different, and just empathize, right? That would create for a much more effective.
Oh, absolutely. And also the opportunities for personalizing, the recommendations they make. And actually, I see this tying in nicely to a question we got from Kaushal Chapaneri. Is it possible that when passenger gets in the car, the AI detects facial expression and suggests audio content?
Yeah, why don't you talk about that? Why don't you talk about the the tie-in to the conversational agents and some of the work we're doing with the likes of Cerence.
Yeah, so that's super interesting, right? So Cerence, as formerly Nuance Communications, they have a system called Drag and Drive, which is a virtual assistant in a vehicle, very much audio-based. And of course, we have developed some audio capabilities as well, right? Where we can derive effects from people's vocal intonations. But Cerence, they're building this virtual assistant where in the future they imagine also using cameras, so that indeed, to the point of this question that Kaushal was his name or her name made, when they're coming into a vehicle, these systems are integrated with our Emotion AI and can detect people's reactions, their expressions from both face and voice, and then personalize content recommendations so that maybe the music adapts based on your mood. It
Right.
might even adapt the music to the mood of the vehicle, right? Like taking into consideration everyone else in there. Content recommendations, but also one thing that Cerence is looking at that I thought was very interesting is to give these virtual assistants more relevant personalities, right? So if it can sense that you're really not in the mood for some chatty stuff and you just need the information, it's very factual and to the point. But if it can tell you're in a good mood and you're relaxed and you're enjoying your ride, then it might get chatty and say like, hey, Gabi, you want to stop for a cup of coffee? I see one of your favorite coffee places is half a mile ahead. You want me to direct you there? And so those type of engagements, I think, are very relevant, and understanding people's reactions based on face and voice is super relevant there. So, all right, so I'm going to move us on to the next area, and then in the meantime, I'll scan for some more questions here. I will say one more time, and I'm going to ask Isabella to bring her lovely banner up. We are going to raffle away 2 books. So we'll randomly select people from the people who've posted comments. So by all means, continue to post your comments. So Rana, one other area that Affectiva explored several years ago, again based on some spike in interest that we saw, was gaming. And I think that's super fascinating, right? Like I know you and I ourselves really aren't big gamers, maybe also because we just don't really have the time for it. But
my son is.
Yeah, my daughter is too. I think they're Minecraft masters, and now spending more time on virtual reality devices too, more than ever. But what I find interesting in gaming is that games are indeed designed to take the player on an emotional journey.
Right.
A lot of really good games are very emotional in nature. Yet these systems do not understand the emotions and the reactions of the people that are playing them.
Right.
So what if Emotion AI was used in gaming? You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, there's 2 main applications of Emotion AI in gaming. One is to personalize and adapt the game in real time based on the emotional response of the gamer, right? So if you can detect that, Adam's playing, I don't know, he plays a lot of Fortnite, whatever. So if you can detect that he's playing a lot of Fortnite but he's getting frustrated, right? Because he can't advance to the next level, and he's about to quit, right? So maybe that's an opportunity to re-engage the player. Yeah. Or if they're having a lot of fun and I don't know, then maybe that's information that you can use to build on, the gaming mechanics. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely a play in kind of the real-time personalization and adaptation of the game. But also for game designers, that kind of quantifying the emotional journey of the gamers can be really powerful data and analytics after the fact, so that they can design, next levels of their game and next iterations of their game. So,
and maybe even in the moment, right? And this is kind of the dirty word always, but it's monetization, right? Like, what if you could monetize on that during real-time gameplay? Right. Again, I think it needs to be with opt-in and consent. Right. But if I could have a better game experience, or if I could get more coins or more opportunities to win the game, then maybe this is interesting, right? So let's see here. I want to be mindful of time as well, but there's one really interesting area I think we need to cover. So right now, during this pandemic, many of us are stuck on these Zoom calls back to back, right? You and I were going to go to a number of events, right? probably be at events right now, speaking on stage and representing Affectiva on your book tour, and all of that has stopped. And now conferences are taking place online. Last week, I did a kind of a keynote at an MIT virtual conference. Super interesting to see how this is all being reconfigured.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the many, many events you're doing online now, what the nature is of these events, and how we're now realizing more than ever that we need our kind of technology really integrated in these systems. So you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So I want to, I guess, start with the real world, like what it would feel like if you're presenting in the real world. Typically, you're on stage, you have the audience, you see the audience, and you can riff off of the energy of that audience. So when I say something funny, I can see if people laugh, and then I can build on it, and it creates this sense of shared experience and a lot of trust and rapport.
And also for the people in the audience, actually, right? Like being there in person, they feed off the energy of the person on stage, but also the people around them, right?
Exactly. And we all feel like we're part of this shared experience. Yeah. And I find that it's so hard to replicate, again, this sense of shared experience in some of these online events that I've been doing. I mean, even now we're streaming live, and we know that there are a lot of people tuned in and listening to us. But I find it really painful and unsettling that I can't see you all. Like I can't. Yeah. And the solution isn't that we all turn on our webcams and I see, like, 100 different thumbnails. That's too overwhelming for the presenter, and it also still doesn't create a sense of shared experience. So what if, regardless of whether I can see your video or not, we have access to your emotional engagement, and we aggregate that anonymously. Like, I don't want to know that Gabi in particular is rolling her eyes at me, right? I just want to know, like, in general.
You want to know that everyone's rolling their eyes at you.
In general, just a quantified summarization of what is the level of engagement. Are people positive or negative? Are they bored?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think also being able to provide that type of readout to the audience could be super helpful, right? To get a sense of how others are experiencing these type of virtual events. And that certainly also really, extends into an area, which is another one that, gosh, from the day I think I walked into Affectiva 6 years ago almost, I think, we talked about this use case, which is in education and online learning. Shall we kind of wrap on that note?
Yeah. Again, it's a very similar kind of surreal experience. And I see that in particular with Adam, who's 11. A lot of his learning is, almost all of his learning is happening online. And it's really hard for the teacher to get a sense of who's engaged, who's paying attention, who's ready to learn. An amazing teacher in the classroom would be able to personalize the learning experience. And it's so hard to do that online. And it's even harder to do with platforms like Khan Academy or Udemy or Coursera, where you're watching this content, but it is completely oblivious to your level of engagement as a student. And imagine if it knew some information and could personalize the learning experience.
Yeah, because also it's interesting, right? Right now, the way that you kind of test whether or not learning is successful is actually through a test. Right? And it's after the fact. And if a student fails a test, well, then something went wrong in the learning process. What if you could intervene in the moment, right? And flag that maybe a student is struggling a bit. That could be an opportunity for a human teacher to get involved. What if students are bored and the content, gets increased in difficulty, or maybe the content moves along faster? So I think there's really interesting opportunities there. So Rana, I was thinking we could spend maybe the last few minutes taking a few questions. I'm going to paraphrase a couple of questions we got that were kind of similar in nature. So for example, Mohammed Gamal and Ricardo Alvarez, they both were kind of touching on the topic of cultural and in-language cues, or as Mohammed said, do our algorithms adapt with different cultures, as some cultures display anger and happiness in different ways?
Yeah.
I think that's a fascinating topic, right? So
that is a fascinating topic.
Where to start, right? There's a lot there.
To summarize like that. Yeah, exactly. I was going to go there. It is so important that we consider the diversity of the data and how we're training these algorithms. So if we train it on a specific gender or a specific age group or a specific ethnic group, then it's not going to generalize across the world. And as I said early on, we are deployed in 90 countries around the world, and we absolutely have to make sure that the algorithms are trained cross-culturally. What we do find is that there are cultural norms that depict when and how people express emotions. So some cultures, people, we all choose to do that at various points in time. Sometimes we amplify an emotion.
Yeah.
We dampen the emotion. And there are cultural differences that we see in how people choose to express these emotions. And because we have so much data right now, we're able to create these benchmarks. So we compare the respondents to a chocolate ad in Japan to all of the other Japanese respondents.
Yeah.
As opposed to, yeah.
And we saw something that was really interesting also in the difference in how men and women react, right? Like, isn't it that women, well, we always know and assume that women are more expressive than men, but I think our data shows some interesting things as well, right?
Yeah, we found, again, in the space, we were looking at how people respond to content. We found that in the United States, women smile 40% more than men. In the UK, in France and Germany, it was 25% more. And in the UK, I don't know if there are any Brits out there that are listening to us, we found no statistically significant difference between men and women.
And that is quite curious, right?
Exactly.
My non-scientific and not validated at all theory on that is that, contrary to popular belief, I think British men are more in touch with their feminine side than we would give them.
Oh, that's interesting.
Not scientifically validated at all.
Oh, look at that. There are some people that are affirming your non-scientific theory out there. Data points.
Maybe my next career path will be down the route of science. Rana, is there anything in terms of use cases that we have missed? Because there are so many and we touched so much ground today.
I've seen a few questions. Hi, Sema. Thanks for tuning in.
Where do you see those, actually?
I'm seeing them pop up on StreamYard, and they're all...
Okay, cool. Why don't you go ahead, Rana?
Yeah, they're all kind of around the okay, but this can go wrong, right? So how can we guard against that? And absolutely, we have chosen in this conversation to focus on the potential transformative use cases of this technology and potential good that can come out of it. But we recognize that there are applications that can misuse it, manipulate people,
good point,
discriminate against people, and there are unintended consequences of this. And we try to be very proactive as a team to think through those and be very kind of vocal advocates for thoughtful regulation and to guard against them. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, but we're definitely kind of
I think for us, what's really important, and you touched earlier a bit on data bias, right, is that we develop our AI mindful of the ethics, right, and making sure that this AI is developed in a way that it works with all humans, regardless of what they look like, age, gender, ethnicity, but also how you deploy these technologies, right? That's huge. We have to be very mindful, and what's really important to us is kind of adhering to the opt-in and consent, right? We don't want to tread into areas of surveillance. We've had opportunities, I think, also, and here's where I'm going to do another shameless plug for your book. In your book, everyone go buy and read it. No, but seriously, in your book, you actually talk about in the early days with Roz, right? Like the company was small and not backed with VC funding just yet. You were almost running out of money. And suddenly this government entity approaches you, an investment arm of a government agency, and said, hey, if you guys pivot to surveillance, we will fund you, I think it was $40 million, which is a huge amount of money, of course. And you and Roz had spent quite a bit of time already discussing your ethics and what you thought the values of the company were. And you decided against it, right? You did not take that money.
Exactly.
And to this day, we've adhered to that because we, again, I guess, right, there's so many use cases of emotion AI, and there's interest coming at us from so many different areas. And sometimes we just sit back and say, nah, it just doesn't work for us. We believe in the potential that this technology has to do good, and where we feel it could be harmful or disenfranchise people, or in simple terms, not do good, then we're going to steer away from it.
Yeah, exactly. And encourage the rest, and encourage, you know, the community, the ecosystem around us to follow suit, right? Like we're very, very vocal about that.
Yeah, and both you and I, whenever we talk publicly, right, we always preempt the questions about ethics, because this is not a conversation we're scared about at all. This is a conversation we want to actually have with people. And we also feel that if we as thought leaders in this AI space can be vocal about it, then we can shed a light on the necessity to consider these issues, and maybe bring along other companies as well. And there's also some really interesting organizations that we're part of, right? Like the Partnership on AI, which is an interesting consortium that brings together all these different stakeholders, where now, you know, Rana, you and I have had opportunity to discuss ethics in AI with, you know, human rights lawyers.
Right. Which we wouldn't typically do, but I love that multi-stakeholder conversation, because that's how we make progress. And it's so important that we're not just technologists talking to each other, right? And we're bringing,
because that's diversity too, right?
Exactly.
Diversity of thought and perspectives, and when you have these diverse voices represented, only then I think you can build good tech. Only then.
Yeah.
So, I'm just quickly,
do we have our book winners?
Yes, because someone on my team applied a very random algorithm. We basically picked the third question on LinkedIn, and she picked the first question on Facebook. So on LinkedIn, our winner of Girl Decoded is Jaren Phillips Rajan. And I do apologize if I mispronounced your name. And the first question on Facebook was from Youssef Gamil. So Youssef and Jaren, we are going to be sending you a book. What we'll do is we'll reach out to you on LinkedIn/Facebook, and we will give you an email address where you can send us your personal address details. Yay! We have a little banner here. Awesome. And we will get the books sent out to you. And if logistically we can make it happen that Rana signs them, then we will try and take care of that. All right. Rana, we are at about 12:45. We should wrap it up today. But yeah, I'm glad we had this conversation, because there's so many interesting uses of this technology. And I do hope that in my lifetime, I will see them all deployed.
Yeah, exactly. We'll keep working hard and partnering with all of you out there to bring it to fruition.
Exactly. So that's a good note to end on. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
See you next week. Bye.